Today, magnesium is sold for everything. Sleeping better, having more energy, lowering stress, even avoiding cramps and improving blood pressure. And when a supplement seems to help with so many things at once, one of two things is usually happening. Either we're dealing with something genuinely important for the body, or the internet has oversimplified the story and exaggerated the results. And with magnesium, something curious happens, because both things have some truth to them. So in this video, I'm going to answer 3 specific questions about magnesium. First, what does magnesium do in your body, and how much of that is backed by real evidence? Second, who is at greater risk of having low magnesium and needs to make up for that deficit? And third, when does it actually make sense to take a supplement, and when is it useless and you can save your money, effort, and expectations? If you understand these 3 things, you already understand almost everything important about magnesium and can decide for yourself. To understand why everyone talks about magnesium, we have to start with a key fact. Magnesium participates in more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. That means it affects many areas: energy production, nerve function, muscle contraction, glucose and insulin control, and even DNA synthesis and repair. So we're talking about a fundamental piece for your body to function properly. But the fact that magnesium is involved in all of this doesn't mean that taking a magnesium supplement will automatically improve all these functions. In fact, if you have a deficiency, correcting it can help. But if you're already fine, taking more magnesium won't magically make your body function better or produce more energy. Something being important doesn't mean it's always worth supplementing. And when we want to identify that deficiency, that's where the first trap related to magnesium appears. Measuring magnesium isn't simple. Less than 1% of the magnesium in your entire body is in your blood. Between 50 and 60% is in bone, and the remaining roughly 40% is inside your cells. So the most common test, blood magnesium dox, is useful, but has an important limitation. You're only seeing that 1%. It can come back normal without that necessarily meaning your total magnesium reserves are fine. This also explains why so many people believe they have a magnesium deficiency just because they saw a list of symptoms on social media, usually including fatigue, stress, cramps, insomnia, even irritability. But the obvious problem is that each of these symptoms can have hundreds of causes that have nothing to do with magnesium. Having symptoms that are associated with magnesium doesn't prove a magnesium deficiency. There's another key fact. Around 48% of the studied population doesn't consume enough magnesium daily. Practically half the population doesn't reach their daily magnesium quota. But you have to separate the fact that not consuming enough isn't good from it automatically being the same as a significant clinical deficiency that causes symptoms and makes you feel bad. The useful question isn't whether magnesium works or not. The useful question is, what do you want to use it for? Because its effectiveness depends entirely on that. To sum it up, there are 4 broad areas where magnesium really matters, and from these you can understand how to use it. One has to do with energy. All your cells run on an energy currency called ATP, and many enzymes in your body use magnesium and ATP together. So magnesium helps cellular energy function properly and be used efficiently. That's real. But going from there to saying, if I take magnesium, I'll have more energy, would be a mistake, because that only holds true if you were lacking magnesium. If you never exercise and never improve your mitochondrial health, taking magnesium won't be the solution for having more energy. The second area is the nervous system, because magnesium modulates neuron excitability. That's why you hear about magnesium for stress, hyperexcitability, sleep, and even muscle relaxation. But the fact that magnesium has an effect on your brain doesn't mean the effect is large. Third, it participates in neuromuscular function and vascular tone, which explains why it's mentioned so often for cramps and blood pressure, though that's not as solid as it seems. And the fourth big area where magnesium is involved has to do with cellular function, bone, and glucose. It helps with glycemic control, bone metabolism, and DNA synthesis and repair. All of this tells us magnesium is very important, but it doesn't prove that supplementing beyond what you need will magically rejuvenate you, relax you, or improve everything. What is true is that if you have a magnesium deficiency, correcting it could improve certain mechanisms, in this case, related to aging or muscle relaxation. Now let's look at where there are real benefits to taking magnesium, where it might add a small effect, and where social media and the internet really overstated its effect. Let's start with the strongest case: migraine. This is one of the scenarios where magnesium is most worth it as a supplement, so much so that the American Headache Society has already added magnesium to its treatment guidelines as something probably effective for prevention. Whenever we talk about taking magnesium for this, the dose tends to be fairly consistent and well tested, around 400 milligrams daily. So the effect on migraine is real, not magical, but real. The second scenario has to do with blood pressure. For blood pressure, magnesium has fairly good evidence, but the problem is the effect is very modest. It does work, but meta-analyses show the reduction in blood pressure from taking magnesium is about 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury, like going from 120 to 117. The effect exists, but obviously losing weight, exercising, improving your diet, or actually treating the underlying cause of hypertension will be much more effective. The third scenario where it seems fairly effective is chronic constipation. Here, magnesium works, but mainly as an osmotic laxative. It draws water into the intestine and helps it move more. But it's not something you should use chronically, since it shouldn't be used all the time. In the long run, it's much smarter to repair your gut microbiota or improve your diet. Now let's go to one of the areas that seemed most promising for magnesium: sleep. Unfortunately, the story is less solid than what's usually promoted. The good evidence on magnesium tells us there are many studies where older adults fall asleep faster using magnesium supplements, meaning it reduces what's called sleep latency by about 10 minutes. That means going from 20 minutes to fall asleep down to 10. That's not a small effect, but it's very likely to work better in people who had a magnesium deficiency, not in people who already have good baseline levels. That's why magnesium seems more effective for older people than for younger ones. So if you're under 50 and want supplements to improve sleep quality, magnesium would not be anywhere near the top of my list. If you want to improve your sleep quality, I have a much more in-depth video linked in the description with all the steps that actually help. And unfortunately, if you have cramps, magnesium hasn't shown effectiveness for cramps specifically. It was thought it might have an effect because it relaxes muscles, but it hasn't gotten evidence to support that claim. If you get cramps, look at other options. The next logical question you should ask based on this is, who is really at higher risk of having low magnesium? There are several clear groups: people with gastrointestinal problems or poor absorption, people with type 2 diabetes, people with high alcohol consumption, because it impairs magnesium absorption, older adults, obviously because our nutrient absorption capacity declines with age, and people on long-term medications like diuretics or proton pump inhibitors such as omeprazole, because these impair absorption or increase kidney loss. There are also diet-related scenarios. Highly processed diets lose magnesium when whole grains are refined. People who are losing weight and eating less, who were barely reaching their daily magnesium quota before, now fall short because they're eating 30% less. And people who systematically exclude nuts, seeds, legumes, leafy greens, or whole grains from their diet, since these are major sources of magnesium. If you're in one of these groups, the good news is that all of this is improvable, and it's possible to reach your daily magnesium quota without needing to supplement. So before going out to buy a magnesium supplement, I'd ask myself two much simpler questions. 1. Am I consuming enough magnesium? And 2, do I belong to a group with higher risk of deficiency or poor absorption? Because often, when you improve your diet with more nuts, seeds, legumes, leafy greens, etc., you not only raise your daily magnesium intake, but improve the quality of your entire diet. And that obviously has a synergistic effect that tends to be more powerful than a magnesium supplement capsule. And if you do decide a supplement is right for you, there are 3 important things to know. 1. Not all magnesiums are equal. The more soluble forms tend to absorb better than others. Magnesium salts like citrate, gluconate, lactate, or threonate absorb better than sulfate or magnesium oxide. 2. More isn't better. High doses can give you diarrhea, nausea, digestive discomfort. Doubling the normal dose won't get you a benefit you didn't already have. And 3. Your personal context matters, because magnesium can interact with treatments you're on, especially if you take bisphosphonates, have kidney disease, or take diuretics. Keep in mind the whole body only contains about 25 grams of magnesium. It's not that much, so improving your diet enough to avoid needing supplements isn't that hard.